Hi guys, so let's now take a look at what we've got with long-term sources of growth. So how can the economy continue to actually grow and develop? Well, you've got to turn to the supply side and developing supply side policies, which are going to be really important here. Now, firstly, let's just get to grips with a couple of key terms to really understand what we're talking about. First up, factor endowment. Really important term when it comes to economic development, and it refers to the land, labour, capital and enterprise within an economy. Now, some countries are naturally blessed with certain factor endowments. If you consider, for instance, Singapore, they don't have any natural resources, but what they do have is access, of course, to the Straits of Malacca and a deep water port, and that was one of the key founding principles within Singapore's economic development, that they were able to actually base themselves as a trading nation. So you can use certain factor endowments within an economy to help you actually start that development process. But it's so important that you actually evolve. Initially, most countries will certainly follow a extensive model of growth. And this extensive model of growth is simply an expansion of inputs, i.e. the land, labour, capital and enterprise that's actually being utilised to increase output. So it really is just a matter of throwing resources at an issue to actually increase output. But eventually, of course, you'll run out of available resources. Now, when that happens, of course, economic growth will slow, and then you need to turn towards more intensive methods of economic growth. So intensive growth is really about increasing efficiency and increasing productivity, within which you actually utilise those factors of production. So increased productivity will help to therefore raise output. So let's think about each of these areas in turn that we have. So land, well, we know some countries do have natural resources that they're able to export. Now that can be both a blessing and a curse, as we've seen, but countries must make sure that they do focus on efficiency and productivity, and that they use export revenues to diversify their export sector and their economy. Now, when it comes to utilising land much better, look at Singapore, what they do there within Hong Kong as well. You have many high-rise buildings, of course. Why is that the case? Well, of course, it's a more efficient, more effective use of that available land. And that means that the actual density of the city can actually increase. So that's a really important point. If you consider London as a further example, you'll see that we don't have that same development of high-rise buildings within London as we do see within Singapore and Hong Kong, and that means we don't have as efficient a use of land, and that perhaps can of course drive up property prices and so on. But it's also about fertilisation methods to ensure, again, that whatever you're farming is being farmed as efficiently and productively as it possibly can be. When it comes to your labour, you need to develop the actual human capital of your labour so that your labour force has more productive potential. And this may well involve training and necessary retraining when a comparative advantage begins to actually dissipate and fade away. So as such, you need to make sure that you really keep up to date and keep your labour force being trained in the skills that are going to be needed by the economy in the future. And it can be difficult to actually determine what those skills will be, but certainly it's something that industries and the labour force will want to work towards, because otherwise they'll find themselves structurally unemployed, and of course that is inefficient. Then we've got capital. So when it comes to capital, this also includes technology as well. So you want to make sure that you've got a good capital goods base, so that there's a lot of investment in capital goods and capital infrastructure, so that you have good roads, railways and airports, to make sure that your transportation is as easy as possible. And that again will help the supply side of the economy. But in addition to that, if we're talking about increased productivity, we need excellent capital goods, and of course technology is a component part of that. Then we've got enterprise and the entrepreneurial climate within an economy. And if you develop a more entrepreneurial climate, it can firstly help to eliminate poverty, even in the poorest types of country. Moreover, it can also help to develop more cutting edge businesses, which will help to facilitate improved economic growth of that given country. And then finally, we've got institutional factors. So institutional factors, just going back to Singapore again, they've kept their government there relatively small and they've kept them very, very clean. There is no corruption when it comes to actually starting a business in Singapore or Hong Kong. It's a very, very easy process. You compare that with the actual implications in setting up and starting your own business in other countries such as the likes of Tanzania, and it can actually take months. So there can be a number of factors that can really help develop entrepreneurialism within an economy. You also want to have a very good banking system, of course. If you have a good banking system, that's going to help develop allocative efficiency of capital to ensure that money is being diverted to the areas that should really receive that. And that will help to improve the allocative efficiency of capital and help to generate increased productivity and increased output. Right, there we go, guys. Interesting stuff. I hope that's been useful. See you next time.